Welcome. You're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show. I'll be with you in just a minute. As my guest, I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. First, a word from our generous and good-looking sponsors. You don't want to miss Beyond HR Forum, being held June 11th and 12th, 2020 in Amsterdam, where you will meet inspiring, forward-looking, and impactful leaders in human resources. Once again, the team at Beyond has selected a great venue, the historic Kramhauthal. It reflects their values of designing a unique space and atmosphere that brings forth intimacy, collaboration, inspiration, and partnership with HR thought leaders from leading companies around the world. The forum moves beyond the current HR to guide you along a journey that progressive leaders in HR are invited to embark upon. Join remarkable guests as they share their insights on how to make humanity the ultimate value to organizations, societies, and the world. This is more than just an event. It's a one-of-a-kind opportunity to inspire your thinking to go beyond and reach the unreachable. For more information and to register, please visit www.beyondhrforum.com. Last year, I met the folks at Tribe.ai. I spoke to co-founder Naomi Davidson, who just blew me away with her origin story. She grew up in a poor and unstable home, didn't graduate from high school, and pretty much raised herself, doing the best she could. Eventually, she got a job and put herself through community college. Wouldn't you know it, she graduated from Berkeley and got a master's degree in mechanical engineering from MIT. I love personal stories like this. As the global head of strategy at LinkedIn, Naomi shared her methods with others, which was a huge success. She and her partner Thomas are paying it forward so others can succeed in life. They built a learning system in partnership with Stanford and Wharton universities. They know what it's like to create something extraordinary from nothing. Tribe's latest development leads your team through daily, personalized micro-coaching. With an 85% adoption rate, this mobile application has users saying, wow. Get your free month of Tribe today. Go to trybe.ai/Lauren, L-O-R-N-E, to receive this fantastic deal. Listen to a few of their users to hear for yourself.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Mwonsa. I'm a fourth-year medical student applying to OBGYN residency, and what I love most about Tribe is that it's not magic. It's a coaching tool that empowers you to coach yourself. Even after the course is done, it's like a sharp knife that allows you to sculpt your life perfectly with the vision you intend. But it's your vision, your hand, your time, your sweat.
Hi, my name is Brenda. I'm a director of engineering and program management at Outward. Tribe forces you to think immediate at what you can actually accomplish within the next 24 hours. Therefore, Tribe acts as a guide and helps you map out small, realistic steps in your journey towards the greater change you're aspiring, and helps you to realize and acknowledge your small wins and celebrate them.
Hi, this is Lauren Epstein. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Lauren Epstein Show here with the Beyond Conference. And I want to welcome our guest, Dr. Leann Pereira. Leann designs behavioral development programs that enhance self-awareness, self-regulation, and executive function in adults. The purpose of her work is to increase self-efficacy, team functioning, and management and leadership effectiveness. She's had incredible results. She holds a doctoral degree in education with a concentration on women's leadership development and a master's degree in organizational development from the University of San Francisco. Welcome to the show, Leann.
Thanks, Lauren. Happy to be here.
We were going to talk today about cell phones and how they're promoting the use of microlearning for soft skills. I know that you've been doing some work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic topic and couldn't think of a more appropriate audience.
Tell us, when you talk about soft skills, because and a lot of the things that you worked on here around self-awareness, self-regulation, executive function, what does that really mean?
So soft skills are the skills that are fairly invisible. Nobody can physically see how somebody might transmit, anxiety or the ability to bring a team together, but you know it when it happens. So they're soft in that it's very hard to build metrics around them. They're generally perceived. You feel them with your emotions largely. And so they differ from hard skills that we can track visibly with numbers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right? I've been around people where they feel anxious or they have a certain feeling that kind of sets the tone. And that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, another word is vibe, or connection, the ability to, make somebody feel at ease, a welcoming feeling. I mean, we all know it when we feel it, and we definitely feel when it's not there, when we're stressed out, or when somebody says something that we recoil at or we shrink back at. And so it's a very subtle thing. And, the funny thing is that we're all people and we all have the ability to perceive and think, but I don't think that most of us can really understand the complexity of how what we say and what we do causes these reactions. And for most of us, these interactions are well beyond our control.
I can tell you, Leann, I can just tell you, being a married guy, I can completely understand that. I have had that experience with my wife where I don't understand exactly what's going on. But thankfully, she's patient with me and sees me through my non-ability to be aware and self-regulate.
Right. I mean, like, first I was talking to my husband yesterday and I said, I study this stuff, but I can tell you emotions are like the color wheel or Eskimos in snow. They're so varied and different, and they morph one into another. And if you see the color wheel, or if you see, those digital picture thingies where you can move from a red to a green and go through all these different colors, or maybe you're going to go from a green to a blue, and that path is completely different. I think emotions have that level of complexity. And it's very hard to be fluent and understand all of those paths and connections and how they make us feel in the moment. So it's a world out there. It's a big, wide world of emotions.
And so when I was coming up in the workforce, nobody really cared about how I felt at work. Why is that important?
Well, because we're learning that there's a very big connection between the way people feel and the way people think. Now, that used to be different when tasks were not as creative as they are now and when things were a lot more prescribed. So, for instance, you can hammer away all day, and maybe if you're happy, sad, angry, elated, tired, distressed, the way you hammer may vary only very slightly, but we learned that your ability to work with others and collaborate or think of new ideas or focus is greatly affected by your emotions. And so the ability for managers and leaders to really understand how to create the right emotional climate, if you will, is incredible. And for those who can do it, the ability to cultivate teams, to bring them together, it'd be like being a conductor in an orchestra for a masterful leader.
And I totally get it. I think most people listening, they're sophisticated leaders, they get it. And I think that they have some handle on it. But sometimes there are leaders who just kind of feel like they throw up their hands and like, I have no idea, what is wrong with my team, right? And what can we say to them to make them feel like it's not you, right? This is part of what it is to be a human being.
Yeah. Well, that's a hard one because it really is them to some extent, because it's like a big soup. It's chemistry. It's baking. So it's an interaction between all the different people, but it's also the environment and the situation, if you will. So a lot of what people experience at work isn't only dictated by our one-on-one interactions, but it is, it's the way the work is being organized, or the sequence of works, or, how many different steps it takes. But I think, to your point, there is a point where self-awareness and our own limitations around what is possible is completely appropriate, right? And so I think an effective leader has to know when they're crossing the boundary between being effective and not being effective. And self-awareness is very much a part of that emotional discourse, if you will.
And so what would be some good signals that they're crossing the boundary?
Well, first of all, I heard this not too long ago, and I just found it so funny. Have you heard of HALT? Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so HALT. So if you're feeling any of those things, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, stop. And there's been one fascinating study that's been circled around by about these judges who were just giving out these more extreme sentences before lunchtime because they were hungry, right? Just simple hunger. So simple biological things can throw off your judgment and your thinking.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. So simple biology stuff. Another thing is receptivity. So lately, I was reading Miles Seligman wrote this new book on hope and optimism and how he was the president of the American Psychological Association, considered one of the founders of positive psychology. And he was telling a story that his daughter, when she was 5, called him a grouch and asked him to change the way he was interacting with her. He basically she said, "Dad, I stopped whining. Did you notice?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, I want you to stop being a grouch." And he said, "Hey, listen," at that moment, he realized that he wasn't going to make his daughter better by pointing out all of her flaws, which I think a lot of us are inclined to do, is jump in and criticize and say, "Hey, you're going to be better because I see this flaw in you and I'm just about to tell you about it." And what Dr. Seligman realized was, hey, we're not doing anybody a favor by telling them their weaknesses. We really want to go and augment their strengths. The core message there was that just because you yourself had an insight doesn't mean that because you transmit this to this person, now the whole world is going to open up for them, or even anything is going to open up for them. So part of the self-awareness there for a leader is to realize that criticism may be more about the leader than it is about the person that they think is going to benefit from their great insight. And I'm saying that with sarcasm. So the ability to self-regulate and hold those thoughts or those criticisms when we're ready to lash out or when we're ready to, offer this up and for one reason or another is a great skill. And figuring out how to deliver that and when to deliver that, if at all, is something that I think a lot of us have to work on.
When I hear it, it sounds like a complicated problem to solve in that we're at work. So you have different people with different ideas about like who you are, right? I mean, how do you change who you are? Changing who you are seems to be like out of all the things, the most difficult thing in the world to do.
Yeah. And so I want to step back from that because I think that goes to this is who I am. And if you don't like me, then X, or this is who I am. How am I supposed to change who I am? And I want to challenge that. And I want to say that is a thought that you're having at the moment that you can hold and not necessarily act on. And that's what we're teaching in these apps. We're teaching people mindfulness and the ability to just have exercise just a tiny bit of a restraint through self-awareness and reflection before taking that action. And so I would say to you, Lauren, if you as we go through these interactions, I see my son, I see he didn't brush his teeth using the electric part of the electric toothbrush, and I want to tell him all these things time and time again. I have learned, or I am learning, that I really need to, telling him to use the electric. I have told him like hundreds of times, and I still don't believe that he's using it any more than he had before. So I need to stop and really think through what would be the most effective way to get him to adopt these behaviors. Now, the problem is the perception of power and authority, right? That hierarchical chain. I'm the parent, he's the son. he should listen, blah, blah, blah. Just as a manager might say, hey, I'm the boss, you're the employee, I told you to do this, you should do this. But the problem is, particularly in work environments and knowledge environments, that authority is not any authority has almost never been the way to create to generate creativity and inspiration. So in the absence of that, you have to then look at how you're interacting with people. And I want to back away from saying that this is an identity-based thing, because I think that's where it gets complicated, in the sense that, hey, it's my identity to behave in this way. What we really want to do is challenge people and say, it's only that way if you continually choose to do it that way. But you can slow things down enough so that you can choose to do something else.
So what I'm hearing you say is that who I am as a human being is not fixed in stone. That in the moment, particularly around emotions, that I can, by being mindful and through some self-restraining, through some kind of pausing, I can choose my response. I can choose how it is that I'm moving forward.
Absolutely. And it's only a matter of practice, really. And I think when you start to slow down, you start to realize that more and more stuff is actually out of your control. So just in the judge example with the whole halt thing, the judge was hungry. Well, the judge can't necessarily start eating on the bench at 10:30, or maybe she can go into the back and take a bite of a sandwich during a 15-minute recess or something like that. But you start to understand how to work within the constraints of your environment to set your environment up in a way that's going to support the behaviors that you want. Right? So in that example, Judge Judy goes into the back and she takes a bite of her sandwich and she's not so cranky before lunch. Or I look at, I haven't cracked the thing with my son yet, so I can't use that one as an example. But we start to understand that our behaviors aren't just our brains within our heads, right? But they're very much connected to the people around us and to the structures of our day. And as we pause and self-reflect, we get cognizant enough of what's going on to make choices and create the environment in which we can then self-regulate. We can show up the way we want to, right? So It's never going to be about willpower, and it's never only about your personality, but it's your ability to be masterful and take all the different factors into account, all the things that will make you behave in the way that you want to behave. And a lot of that, again, is way beyond an individual's person's identity or sense of will.
So I'm going to share an example, and I can share this relationship with my wife. Is that, or I'll even take it away. I'll put it in my work context. So I was talking to a potential client, and they were talking, and I could tell that they like to talk. So they were talking and using up a lot of the time in the conversation just to talk. And I could have interrupted them and helped them to make my point, because I don't think they were getting my point. Like, they're talking about something and they don't understand my point. But I said to myself, you know what? Just let them talk. Don't say anything. Just let them talk. Let them get it all out. Let them finish what they're saying. And then when they're done, I'll clarify. And I think that that's not always been my way. When I was younger, if I heard someone talking and they were saying something where I clearly understood they didn't understand me, I would interrupt them. And that didn't work out well often. Not always, but sometimes that wouldn't work out well.
Yeah, that's an excellent example, because I think you learned a couple of things in doing that. Is first, that you did have a choice and you can do something differently. And second, that as a result of doing something differently, you felt differently. And third, maybe that person perceived you differently, or others perceived you differently. Now, I'm not sure if that's the way you want to go every single time, but knowing that there are choices and that perceptions can shift and your experience can shift as a result of those choices is what mastery is about.
Yeah, and it's because when you use the word mastery, for me, that always intimidates me. I'm like, I don't ever consider myself a master. And I think when we talk about this, and I want to talk about some of the solutions that are out there, because truthfully, I think it intimidates people. It's like, hey, this is who I am. I'm not going to change. I've never changed. Even though as human beings, we all know that we've changed, right?
Yeah, we totally change. Yeah,
like his kid said, like they don't whine anymore, right? I mean, we changed.
Yeah, we don't whine all the time to our moms, maybe to other folks. I think you're right. I think that like most of us go through life and the people around us or the situation dictates how we respond. And if we change, it's not necessarily because we chose to. And so when I use the word mastery, I use it in the sense of self-direction, not necessarily as authoritative in the, where there's that intimidation of the great master and they're coming and bestowing this upon you, but really as a freedom to navigate or freedom to roam, if you will, freedom to enjoy life the way it should be enjoyed,
Sure. Like I'll paraphrase it the way I'm hearing it. Self-direction is having the power to author my present experience
in a way that's tremendously gratifying to you and to those around you.
Right. If that's my goal.
Yeah, you're right. Well, right. So there are situations that it's not going to be gratifying in the sense it may just be useful. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but in a way that works.
In a way that works. Without, I want to add, I think the mastery part gives you a sense of a lack of anxiety. There's an absence of fear or recrimination, but an acceptance type of thing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I like that. So that there's more freedom for me. There's more room for me. So let's talk about, and I love where this conversation is going. Let's talk about some of the solutions. And I want to first talk about the psychology of the solutions, right? Because that's your expertise.
Sure. Right. So the solutions are really about self-awareness fundamentally. So any technology that we're going to apply is not only going to provide insights, because we see that technology and AI is fantastic in providing insights, but the purpose of those insights is to generate this cycle of self-awareness, practice, reflection, insight. So fundamentally, we really want to open people's eyes up to the world around them and how they are influencing or reacting to the world. So that's what I mean by self-awareness. This thing happened. What's it mean to me? How did I interpret it? What did I choose to do as a result of that? And is that what I wanted to do? Did that work out for me?
Gotcha. Okay. And so what's the research behind that?
God, there was a lot of research. Where do I start?
Well, I guess maybe obviously, right? We don't have hours or days, but paraphrase it in the context of I'm talking to a CHRO, I'm talking to an HR leader. What would I tell them?
Let me put it to you this way. So there was a recent article out in Harvard Business Review by Edward Chang about D&I training. And what they said was D&I training may not work, right? They gave 3,000 hours of online web, it could have been mobile training to, they gave 3,000 people 1 hour of training around gender bias. And they found that 6 months later or a period of time later, that made no difference in what they were doing. And so that's sort of the starting point is, if we give people training, what is the kind of training that will make a difference? And that's where the psychology comes into it. And what we're finding is that telling people the way things are, like, okay, racism exists, or climate change exists, or, you're overweight. That's not, that level of awareness is sort of like is just sort of a low level, or, an introduction. Now you have information about it. And what we want to do is we want to move people up the ladder in creating not just awareness of the problem, but awareness of how they're creating or interacting with the problem in their thoughts and behaviors.
So when people are, kind of getting that first low level introduction to something, sometimes that's helpful. Like, I might not know that, for example, in my neighborhood, there's serious flooding. Right. So that's a great level of awareness. Then what do I do? So if I want to, what is the level of awareness that we want people to embrace in order for them to change their behaviors?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that changing behavior. So let me go back to the weight loss example, because I think that's a fantastic one that everybody is familiar with at some level. We know that as Americans, that we have supersize everything. We know that our jobs are crazy, so we drive and we don't get a lot of exercise to and from work. We know that we work crazy hours so that we don't get to go to the gym afterward. And we know that we use boxed and processed foods because nobody has time to cook all the. So there's an epidemic of obesity that's gone down to our children. So what we're looking to do is change the individual's behavior so that the individual can then be healthy and make the right choices. And you kind of want to say, like, really, is really that what it's about? Because the whole infrastructure is set up against those optimal behaviors. And I think the same is true with diversity and inclusion and those types of things, where you have a lot of history around certain behaviors being okay in the workplace. I mean, or, in the case of American history, you get folks that weren't allowed to own property up until, very recently. And then all of a sudden we want to put the onus on the individual to create these incredible systemic changes. And it's ridiculous. So I think.
Yeah, I was talking with a neighbor of mine who's a teacher, and we talk about how much pressure has been placed on the schools to make sure that these kids get an equal and fair education. However, what's occurred for these kids who don't do well in school is outside of the school's control. Like, their parents have to work multiple jobs because their current job, one, is not a 40-hour-a-week job. They don't have benefits. They don't make enough money. All these things which take them away from giving time to their child to get them more prepared for school.
Exactly. And so I think that what any appropriate training should do is develop the ability. So it's easy to say, okay, do this, do that, and be kind of be like cut off and judgy about it, right? And so my thing is, can I help any person, every person, all of us together create enough self-awareness to sit down and ask the bigger questions and not come up with the knee-jerk reactions and say, well, this is who I am, or this is the way the world is, and it's going to keep being that way. But because the fact of the matter is that if we don't do anything differently, we reconstruct the world that was. If we're not learning, we're doing exactly the same thing that we did before, and this is what we get, right? And so we want to create that psychological openness and that ability to think beyond what we think we already know. And we're going to do that by starting with inquiry. And
I got to say, I'm just making a plug to our host, the Beyond Conference. So the idea of being able to think beyond what we already know is really a powerful statement.
And it's one that we all discover and rediscover time and time again, right? I just like me again, going to the example with telling my son to brush his teeth. we here now, as we create our self-awareness, then we create a community of people that can inquire together. And I believe that's probably what's going to go on at the Beyond Conference and places like that, right? Where we create community spaces where we share our new insights. But the idea is, we always want to start with, hey, how am I reacting to this? Is it going to be a knee-jerk thing, or am I going to choose to do something different? And it's truly a practice where the more you do it, the better at it you get. And
so let me ask you, Leann, because you clearly have a dilemma with your child. I mean, this is and you're not alone. I'm sure every parent who's listening to this is like, I completely understand. So let's walk through, because I know we're going to talk really briefly towards the end about some technological solutions, but talk through what's the first thing that, clearly you're aware that this isn't working. You've told your child, you said hundreds of times, to do this thing and they don't do it. What's the first thing you're going to do if you're going to take yourself through this self-awareness process?
So what I do is so thank you for asking. I love that. So I finally realized that I get triggered emotionally. So I get triggered emotionally by an idea that my son's teeth, his name is Prayag. Prayag's teeth are bad, and it's bad because of something that he's doing. So automatically I get this blame thing, and I get triggered, and I get this emotional rush of frustration and fear and anxiety all together. And that emotion, when I see that, I interpret that as, I as a parent must do something, and that something is I must tell Prayag how urgent it is that he brush his teeth, because he doesn't know that, or he must not really know that. So I get this thought in my head. I generate all these emotions around it. Those emotions trigger this idea that I must change his behavior, and I'm going to change his behavior by conveying my concern and my frustration and my advice.
And then what happens?
And then I do that and nothing changes.
Right. So what do you think's going on for Prayag?
Well, so I think what he thinks, I'm not exactly sure what he thinks. Lauren, I don't know what he thinks around this, because we haven't had a chance to deconstruct that. Like, I haven't had enough presence of mind to just sit down simply with my child and say, please tell me what you think about your oral care, because that idea seems so absurd to me. But now that I'm actually saying this to you, I think I'm going to have that conversation.
Oh, that's great. So the first thing you're going to do is talk to this person and find out what they're hearing and what their experience is around this thing.
And then I'm going to say, hey, how do I appear to you? Because that actually is nothing. I never asked him that question, Lauren. I never asked him that question around his teeth. How do I appear to you when I do this?
Have you done that with other things?
I have with my husband. That's a lot. I think that's a lot easier for me, because I don't have this sense of responsibility or this sense of control / power / responsibility as I do with my son. So I feel like I can be more vulnerable with my husband, but it's kind of hard to be vulnerable with my son for me. Yeah.
And that's interesting. So when you say vulnerable, what do you mean?
Well, because I think I'm supposed to be the parent, and I'm supposed to be telling him or taking responsibility for his oral care, right? And
right.
So I feel like, I'm supposed to make everything okay. And make is an operative word. Like, I'm supposed to make everything okay. Like, poof, don't worry. Mom will pay for the dental appointments. Don't worry. We'll get this, we'll get that. But I think that's my problem there, right? That there is this overarching sense of responsibility, this power imbalance that I have to do this. And,
no, I think it's so when we talk about mastery, if I was going to reflect back mastery, and what you're saying is that you clearly have a sense of self-awareness that one, this is a problem. Two, that you're in part generating this problem. And three, you would like to do something to make this not a problem. Like, those three things seem to be part of what you're talking about. Is that true?
That's true.
So I think that those three things probably have to be in place for anyone dealing with this at any level.
Yeah. And I think, I would agree with you. Absolutely. Right. Do you want to say more about that?
Well, I mean, I can say with my wife, like you, I mean, I have she's my primary relationship. I have a commitment to to have a great relationship with her. So uh, I'll do whatever it takes to have it work, right? I do want to make it work. Often I can see, because of the feedback she's given me, that, I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'm showing up in a way that's not working. And also I'll see that there is some kind of breakdown, right? There's something going on that's not working. And for me, I got to choose, do I want to have that emotional conversation or that conversation about that or not? And if I don't have it, then I can't expect anything to be different. But if I'm willing to have it, and often it's a very quick conversation because we have a relationship, that it'll shift itself. So there is that feedback mechanism of, if I'm willing to have the conversation with her, one, I can say, I've identified this problem. I can see that I am part of this problem. What do I need to do? How am I showing up so that I can change this?
Yeah. And I think there's also an element of hope. And like, to your point, you're deeply committed to your relationship with your wife. So you're going to do everything that you can do possibly to make it right. And I think that pursuit and that commitment is critical to change, right? For ourselves, right? If we want to change the situation and change how we're interacting, we can't decide to shut it out or avoid it, and we have to persist, and that takes a great amount of commitment and energy. So it's not that I don't think we can change everything in the world just for our own limitations. We really have to prioritize and choose what we want to work on.
Yeah, and I think there is a time when you do make the hurt go away from your child, right? They have a boo-boo, you kiss it, and they're magically better.
Yeah, and
I mean, your child's hungry, and you give them food, and they're happy.
Those are so simple, and that's, for me, that's sort of the shift into adulthood that's been a little bit. I think maybe that's a challenge with a lot of parents, where we have to start allowing ourselves to be maybe a little bit vulnerable and treat them as adults, because it becomes a problem, our problem. So Prayag, my son, has to engage in the dialogue. It's not a simple fix, right? Like, to the point with your wife, it's now both of you together wanting to solve the problem. And you helped me realize that for my son, it's probably not about his teeth, but it's about how mom is showing up for him. And the teeth is just one example. Maybe he's doing it on purpose because he really wants me to see that he's an adult. He can make different changes, or he's grown and he can make different choices, or that it is under his control. So,
well, let's talk about some of the technology that's out there that is going to help folks do this at a business level. I know that you've been working on some stuff.
Yeah, right. So we have an application. It's fantastic. It's called Tribe. And what it allows you to do is reflect out loud and record your reflections. And then at the end of the week, we let you know that, we analyze it using AI, and we say, okay, you have done this many reflections, and we know that you're using these growth terms. So we analyze it for growth and learning, but it's grounded in cognitive research and behavioral research.
Okay, so Leann, tell me, how does this work, the app that you have, work for people to change their behaviors and be able to be more authoritative on how, not authoritative, but be the author of their experience of themselves and others?
App walks you through a number of self-reflections where you can build that self-awareness, right? That's important for the self-mastery. So what you actually do is you log into the app on a daily basis. You get a prompt from your phone, and you start talking. So what that looks like is this: you pick up your phone, you go to your calendar, you click into the invitation. And then you click into the link. And it brings up your interface with 5 different questions. Now, we encourage you to reflect out loud, because there's a lot of research that says when you're speaking out loud, you get better benefits. And so you're going to see questions on a one by one. You're going to see 5 questions, and you're going to talk your response, and then you're going to click done, and it's going to bring up the next question. And so let me give you an example of a question.
So I'm talking into the phone, and the AI in the software is understanding what I'm saying.
Exactly. So the AI in the software is listening to your conversation, and then it's going to let you know how many growth terms you've been using, whether or not you're saying growth-oriented things. And that we're hoping that feedback loop is going to inspire you to understand what growth sounds like when you speak it versus when you don't.
So give me an example.
So an example is a question about being able to listen to feedback. So the question is any part of asking for feedback hard? And if so, can I try something new to make it easier? Now, let me ask you that question, Lauren. Is any part of asking for feedback hard? And if so, can you try something new to make it easier?
So yeah, the part that I think about feedback that I don't like is when I feel like it's personal and it's about my ego. And I think what I could do is either one, if I'm hearing it, is either to say it back to the person, or to write it down, or to get it in writing, so that there's a little more time and space in between the feedback coming and me processing it. So I think getting more time to process feedback definitely helps.
Okay, so that blurb, we would just record that, and you would click complete on that question, then you would go to the next prompt. So let's just try the next prompt. So the next one is, think of a moment you got criticism and responded with openness. What made that possible for you?
Well, when I think I was aware that I was asking for it. One, that I was asking for it. So I was giving the person permission to give me the feedback. That was to be the main thing.
Okay, great. And then you would click complete, and we would go through a couple of other questions like that. At the end of the day, the AI would go through and analyze your responses and find it, and we would categorize it. And we would say, okay, Lauren, you use growth terms 3 different times. First of all, you said that you were asking for feedback. Second of all, you actually came up with examples of what you would want to do. So that we're hoping that insight will reinforce what you have said, and then you would further, it would just be a snowball effect. You would act more positively as a result of knowing that. But the key is that you have first even thought about this and brought it into your consciousness, and then we would reinforce that through the AI.
Right. Okay. What's the efficacy? Like, if I do this, what have you found to be true for my life getting better?
Yeah, that's a good one. So we found that people have increased sense of optimism and confidence at the end of 6 to 8 weeks. The purpose, what we're trying to do is increase, in certain populations, we want to increase retention. Right. So we know that people fall out of environments. They feel like it's too hard. They feel too much stress. But we believe that in these short bursts of learning, these 6 to 8 coaching sessions, that if we continue to reinforce positivity and feelings of confidence, then at the end of the term, they're more likely to stay and be retained in those roles. So right now we're looking at affect largely. How does it feel? Does it increase self-reports of confidence and all of that stuff? Those are very encouraging. We're hoping later to study the relationship between those increased affective measures and retention. And we'd love to have more study participant partners, FYI.
Gotcha. Cool. So how long do you think, if I was using this, would I see some kind of change, and what's the iterations of me using it? Like, is it every day? Is it 5 minutes?
Every day. We would love it for you to do every day. We see a range of participation. We find at least 30% of the folks that are enrolled are using it almost every day. That's a fantastically high number of people to be doing this. It's like going to the gym, so that's fantastic. And the effects are immediate. I mean, as soon as because awareness is immediate. It's like an aha moment.
Gotcha. Cool. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being on the call. And I know that you're going to take our conversation earlier about your son back to you. I was wondering, maybe we can follow up on that.
Lauren, I would love that. I really would. Fantastic.
Cool. And how can folks find you and how can they find Tribe?
So you can always email me directly. My email is easy. It's catchleann@gmail.com. Catch as in catch a ball. Leann is Leann @gmail. You can find me on LinkedIn, Leann Pereira, Pereira. Or please come to our website at Tribe. We'd love to hear from you. trybe.ai. We are actively enrolling participants in efficacy studies. So we'd love to get more partners.
And the final question, is this good for people in other countries? Because a lot of the folks listening to this are overseas. They're in Europe and they're in Asia.
Yeah, absolutely. From a techie perspective, we can talk more about that later, but absolutely, we'd love to work with people all over the world.
Are you a
GDPR compliant? Yes.
Yeah. GDPR. Thank goodness, I swear it's been so you are GDPR compliant?
Yes, we are.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Leann, for being on the show.
Thank you, Lauren. Take care.
And we want to tell all of the folks listening to go to Beyond HR Forum, the website, register or get an invite. It's really only for the highest level folks in an HR organization. At the very least, sign up to get more information about what they're up to. They're a great bunch of folks. Again, thanks for listening to the Lauren Epstein Show in partnership with the Beyond Conference. We'll see you on the next episode of the Lauren Epstein Show. And now a word from our generous and good-looking sponsors. You don't want to miss Beyond HR Forum, being held June 11th and 12th, 2020 in Amsterdam, where you will meet inspiring, forward-looking, and impactful leaders in human resources. Once again, the team at Beyond has selected a great venue, the historic Kramhauthal. It reflects their values of designing a unique space and atmosphere that brings forth intimacy, collaboration, inspiration, and partnership with HR thought leaders from leading companies around the world. The forum moves beyond the current HR to guide you along a journey that progressive leaders in HR are invited to embark upon. Join remarkable guests as they share their insights on how to make humanity the ultimate value to organizations, societies, and the world. This is more than just an event. It's a one-of-a-kind opportunity to inspire your thinking to go beyond and reach the unreachable. For more information and to register, please visit www.beyondhrforum.com. Last year, I met the folks at Tribe.ai. I spoke to co-founder Naomi Davidson, who just blew me away with her origin story. She grew up in a poor and unstable home, didn't graduate from high school, and pretty much raised herself, doing the best she could. Eventually, she got a job and put herself through community college. Wouldn't you know it, she graduated from Berkeley and got a master's degree in mechanical engineering from MIT. I love personal stories like this. As the global head of strategy at LinkedIn, Naomi shared her methods with others, which was a huge success. She and her partner Thomas are paying it forward so others can succeed in life. They built a learning system in partnership with Stanford and Wharton universities. They know what it's like to create something extraordinary from nothing. Tribe's latest development leads your team through daily, personalized micro-coaching. With an 85% adoption rate, this mobile application has users saying, wow. Get your free month of Tribe today. Go to trybe.ai/Lorne, Lorne, to receive this fantastic deal. Listen to a few of their users to hear for yourself.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Mwonsa. I'm a fourth-year medical student applying to OBGYN residency, and what I love most about Tribe is that it's not magic. It's a coaching tool that empowers you to coach yourself. Even after the course is done, it's like a sharp knife that allows you to sculpt your life perfectly with the vision you intend. But it's your vision, your hand, your time, your sweat.
Hi, my name is Brenda. I'm a director of engineering and program management at Outward. Tribe forces you to think immediate at what you can actually accomplish within the next 24 hours. Therefore, Tribe acts as a guide and helps you map out small, realistic steps in your journey towards the greater change you're aspiring, and helps you to realize and acknowledge your small wins and celebrate them.
If you want to sell more to HR and TA professionals, we can help you bring your brand into the ears of over 100,000 decision makers around the world. To advertise on this and other shows, contact us at lauren@laurenepstein.com. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show. Do me a favor and subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast player. You can get us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play. And be sure to catch us on YouTube. Thanks.
The Lauren Epstein Show was produced and hosted by Lauren Epstein. Our show engineer and music creator is Afate Odai. This show is also copywritten by Electric Cow.